AI can analyze your data with today's special guest, Cara Burke. Today's episode is brought to you by the bestseller ChatGPT Profits. This book is the missing instruction manual to get you up and running with ChatGPT in a matter of minutes. As a special gift, you can get it absolutely free at artificialintelligencepod.com/gift or at the link right below this episode. Make sure to grab your copy before it goes back up to full price. Are you tired of dealing with your boss? Do you feel underpaid and underappreciated? If you want to make it online, fire your boss, and start living your retirement dreams now, then you come to the right place. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast Show, where you will learn how to use artificial intelligence to open new revenue streams and make money while you sleep. Presented live from a tropical island in the South Pacific by best-selling author Jonathan Green. Now, here's your host. Now, Cara, I'm excited to have you here because most people think, when they think of AI, they think of generating images, making videos, or creating blog posts. And those are the three things that AI is the worst at. And your specialty is so important. And I really want to dive into this, is like how important being data-driven is for business. And I think that one of the big curses is that every once in a while, someone has an emotional idea business and it works. And even though it's 1 in 1,000 or 1 in a million, people go, well, it worked for them. It will work for everyone. And it throws off everything, right? It's the exception that proves the rule, but everyone starts to believe in it. So a lot of companies can't afford high-level analytics. They can't afford the really expensive split testing tool or data tools. But now AI can really analyze data in some really cool ways. And I think smaller businesses need to start taking a look at this to help them to become bigger businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I think gets overlooked a lot in the smaller businesses. And I hear a lot, there's only a few of us that work here. We know what's going on. We don't need to look at our data. But there's so much power in understanding your numbers. And to me, if you don't understand your data, you don't understand your business. There's so many insights that you can uncover that will help get to the next level. And a lot of companies aren't doing that. They're doing the very basics just to get by. So there's a lot of new technologies coming out, but a lot of it has also been around for a long time. And so it's crucial for these companies to make sure that they have that foundation of their data. They have it stored properly. They have a good security policy. They understand what they have, what it means, and how it applies to their business. And so by having all of that, the sky's the limit on what they can do.
Oh, I'm always amazed by the number of companies that don't know who their customer is. So I'll say to a customer, I ask this a lot. Whenever people reach out to me about referrals or doing business, you guys say, okay, who's your ideal customer? And they'll say, oh, I don't know. Or everybody. And that always means,
yeah.
So I've learned, because I pay a lot of attention to my audience, the majority of my customer base is ladies. And when I started in business, my metaphors were all based on science fiction robot explosion books. So my very first sales letter was airplanes flying over a city, dive bombing and dropping bombs made out of money. That's a sales page that will be very attractive to a young boy, 16, 14, too. But ladies that and go, oh no way. So I had to learn because I know my audiences, and this is obviously a very big example, to use metaphors that are not off-putting, just even get to neutral, because I would talk about things and you just want to speak in a way that resonates with your audience. And as my business has grown more and more, the evolution has changed. But if you don't know who your customer is, you can very easily be speaking in a way that pushes them away or loses interest, or they don't know what you're talking about. So I would use sports metaphors, and I don't do that at all anymore, because it's, again, my customer base doesn't know the rules of football. So they don't know the fair kick rule. So that's going to be they're going to read that email and go, what is this person talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about something that happened in one football game 34 years ago. So I've had to adjust, and that's just the first level. And knowing there's so many things that you can know is what time of the day do most people buy from you? What are people's favorite product? It's so often I'm always wrong. So my team will often come to me with an idea. And one of my employees came to this. She came to an idea. She goes, we should try this product to promote this product to our audience. I go, that's a terrible idea. Nobody will like that. It's such a bad idea. And I said, however, I'm usually wrong. So let's try. And it was the most profitable day we'd had in 8 years. So I have two policies. I will say when I think something is wrong, and then I'll go, but I'm usually also wrong. So let's test it to make sure. Sometimes I'm right. I'm not always wrong, but usually. So most of the time when I guess how a promotion will go, I get it wrong. So I think it's adding in a testing them and saying, let's use data to find out. But let's start at the basics. What are the most important pieces of data for a small or medium-sized business to keep track of or be aware of? Let's start just right there. What should you know right off the top of your head?
Especially if you're selling a product, like an actual physical product, you've got to have a bill of materials. You have to know what your costs are going in before you produce anything. So a lot of people get surprised when they go through and actually figure it out, because you're not purchasing materials to make one product. You're typically purchasing materials to make large quantities of a product before you ship it out. So you have to be able to break it down into, okay, let's say you're working in a restaurant. They're making macaroni and cheese. They need pasta, they need cheese, they need noodle, milk, they need salt, pepper, all of those little ingredients, extra ingredients that go into that dish. They're probably buying in bulk. So to understand down to the portion size what their cost is to make a single dish of macaroni and cheese, a lot of places don't know. They just think that they're making money because maybe they're selling it at a market value that's similar to the restaurant next door, but the restaurant next door might be getting a better deal on their pasta. So to have that bill of materials and know down to the portion size, how much it costs, how much of each ingredient am I putting into this dish every time I make it, and how much does that ingredient cost? And knowing all in, what does it cost me to make this dish of macaroni and cheese? Maybe they're selling it for $5, but it costs them $4.50 to make. So their margin is very small, where next door, it might only cost them $2.50. So I would say, especially if you're producing a product, it is crucial that you have that bill of materials and that you're tracking it for changes. You might have pricing fluctuations that come in throughout the year, depending on seasonality, depending on if you're buying a commodity product, something off of the USDA, those prices change throughout the year. So you have to build in a little bit of wiggle room for when that's changing. So I would say absolutely, if you're producing products, you've got to know your bill of materials.
In a lot of other countries, we don't have this in America, but they have something called a value added tax. So you have to know what the parts were worth and what the final good is worth. So they force you to know that number so you can do your taxes. So you know what was the cost of metal and wires, and then what did you sell the clock for? And that's basically you subtract those one number from the other to figure that's how much I've increased the value. Another number that a lot of entrepreneurs and even smaller businesses don't track is time.
Mm-hmm.
Was built making things that she would sell. And I was like, how do you come up with the price? She would say, this is the cost of the parts. And I add an amount of margin. And I said, how long does it take you to make each unit? Because when you're a solopreneur, you can get away with doing that because all the profit goes to you. But when you're paying someone else, suddenly your cost, it will change because you have to pay someone else for their time. That will completely change it. So if you're paying yourself $8 an hour, the minimum wage is $15, you have a real problem when you launch the product because now either you're upside down or you're losing something. And I see a lot of companies don't connect those two numbers enough, which is, it's actually happened earlier today. One of my friends was in negotiations to buy another company. And he was like, here's the gross of what revenue they generate a month. I was like, what's the profit? Before you, like, that whole number, but there's a reason it's called gross. I said, what's the amount of money you get to keep or as I like to call it, right? The net, whatever you want to call it, the money that I get. So we are distracted more and more by imaginary numbers like gross profit or reach or potential. And do you think this is really good to help people look at some concrete numbers after looking at how much they're spending on staff or how much kind of the parts? So cost of goods sold is basically at your admin or your employee cost plus your like ingredients cost. What's the next thing, especially for people that have online companies or have a major online presence? What should they be tracking next?
Yeah, their sales. Absolutely. You should know how much of what are you selling and comparing that to all of your other offerings. A lot of times people underestimate what their bestseller is. If you really go back and take a look at those numbers, a lot of times people are surprised because they might be seeing more revenue from a certain product, but that goes back to your bill of materials. You might have a more profitable product that also has maybe a medium amount of interest and demand in the marketplace. So it's your cost on one side, but then it's also understanding your demand. So what products am I getting? If maybe I'm selling a lot of something that's at a low margin, so I think it's my best seller, but you've got a higher margin product that's got a decent demand. So you have to be able to tie both your sales and your margin together to really come up with a good sales and marketing strategy. And you might also not understand your right demographic. This goes back to the story that you just told. Your key demographic is women, but you started off by marketing to men with the airplanes and the fun metaphors of sports and things like that. So looking at the numbers, who is buying my products? What are their demographics? Where are they located? How old are they? Do they have a family? Do they not have a family? What are the things that make up my key customer? And you can't know that unless you're really looking at who is buying my products? When are they buying my products? How much of my products are they buying? And why? And trying to figure out why. What is resonating with them? And those are all things that you can gather from your sales data.
So one thing I've noticed is that sometimes you'll look at the customer data and it's wrong because partners will use each other's credit cards. So that's one of the things I had to look at is that at first you go, oh, it's all of this people, but a lot of families, they'll have the same credit card with two names or whatever. And so I actually have to look at what's the name on the email address or what's the person who actually signed up in the membership area to make sure. And that's a little layered to the data. Another area where people get really lost is social media. On social media, most of the metrics people chase are imaginary numbers. They chase reach, they chase virality, they chase momentum. And so the further away a metric is from money, the less valuable it is. And yet the more people chase it. So I had a video go viral on LinkedIn a few months ago, maybe it was 2 or 3 months ago, 420,000 plus views on LinkedIn. Huh. And it led to 60 followers and 0 sales. So if you look at the first number, amazing. Sounds really cool. Wow. Because that's huge for LinkedIn. LinkedIn, it's very hard to go viral. But then you look at the other numbers and the value. So if you look at the second number, you go, 60 followers. That's really great. So my video the day before got it got about 120 followers. So the video the day before, which had 1,000 views, got 60 followers. So this one doubled, even though it 100x or 50, how many more people watched it. So the massive increase when more people saw it who were not the right customer for me is what it really meant. More of the wrong people saw it, attracted the wrong people. And that's the nature of virality. For something to be viral, lots of people have to like it, which means lots of people who are not your customer have to like it. And then when you look at numbers, the only metric that really matters first is revenue. Like how many customers came from this platform and how much did they spend? Then before that, you look at how many people came from that platform and joined my email list or visit my website. You want to use one of those metrics. So as we get further and further, the least important metric is how often did we post last week and how many people viewed or left a comment. But we chased the wrong numbers. And I learned that because I met someone who had 500,000 Instagram followers. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, you must be making a ton of money. He's like, I've never made $1. And I was like, what? What did you? So it's very possible to build a massive non-monetizable audience because you could build this audience that has nothing in common with each other, which means no one wants to advertise to them because you're only going to advertise to a small percentage of that audience. So when companies are looking at traffic metrics or social media metrics, what's the correct way to look at it?
Sure. Good. That's a really good question because I see this a lot, right? You might be following digital marketers on LinkedIn, Instagram, and you'll see these charts of this line that's just going shoot, pointing straight up. And you're like, oh my gosh, they grew so many followers. They grew so many impressions. Look at this. This must be amazing. But they're not making any sales off of that following, right? Or maybe it's for a company that has a brick and mortar store in a particular location. Okay, maybe you grew 1,000 followers in a week or something, but how many of those followers are actually in your location that can go walk into your brick and mortar store? So I agree 100%. There's so many metrics on LinkedIn that maybe give you a sense of how well your posts are resonating. But if you're not hitting that key customer, it's just, okay, cool. Like it doesn't really do anything for my business. So you really want to track conversion rate. That is huge. You mentioned that. How many of the people that are looking at this post are then clicking on the link I've provided to go to my website? You really want to track those click by click metrics. Who's clicking on my website? And then can I also track on my website how many are now putting something in their cart or booking a call with me or sending me a message on LinkedIn? Those are the things that you really need to track that matter to your business that are going to help convert into dollars, which is the actual goal, right? The goal isn't followers. The goal isn't people looking at my posts. Those are maybe a means to an end, but the goal is generate revenue, generate sales, generate customers. And that's something that gets forgotten a lot, I think, when it comes to some of these digital marketing or influencer programs that are out there.
So there's this quote from The Art of War that I think about all the time, which is all warfare is based on deception. And I usually think all marketing is based on perception.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're trying to show people you're good at marketing, it's very different. The metrics you're showing, maybe I'm revealing a big secret here, but almost everyone with a large following is cooking the books in one way or another. So there are ways to get 1 million followers very quickly. And there are buy them, or you can run a contest in a certain way. There's a bunch of ways to do it. I don't want to list them because I don't want people to do it, but then what happens is, especially if now people like to call it, they call it like personal branding, they call it, which is just the new name for, and then the only thing, when you do that, you build this following that's non-optimized or not real customers. And the only thing you can do is sell to other people that are buying on perception, which means you bought a course on personal branding. Now you can only sell personal branding. So I see these accounts with 1 million followers who never get a comment, or they get 1 or 2 comments per post or 1 or 2 responses per post. And their click rates are so low, right? There's such a low proportion. And this isn't just in social media. Email marketers cook the books in a different way. Email marketers will keep a dead email on their list forever just to say how large their list is. They never give up active list size. Number of people on your email list might be 1 million, but active is how many people have opened an email in the last 30 days. And I know companies where it's 1% or 2% or 3%, like 3,000 or 30,000 people, not 1 million, but they just keep the bigger number. And podcasting is, you cannot track how many people have listened to an episode. So I will never know how many people listened to this episode. I'll only know how many people downloaded it. And I have in my phone right now over 1,000 podcast episodes that have auto downloaded that I'll never listen to.
Sure.
Every week I download episodes from 50 different shows, and then I pick which one I feel like listening to. It's not all of them. So there's a huge disparity in these numbers between the two things. And this is why people on the outside who are looking at other people's analytics can get lost and be so impressed by the wrong thing and end up, this is the dangerous place, emulating someone who's doing things that are actually a negative for your business. It can damage your reputation. Because if you create an untargeted following on social media, they'll keep showing your content to the wrong audience, and you can't recover from that. You can, but it's a massive effort. You have to delete those followers and do a reset and this whole thing, because you have a lot of people, but none of them are customers. And this goes back to what we said at the beginning. If you don't know your customers, then you don't know who you want to attract on social media. You don't attract to your website, and the whole thing comes falling down. So you mentioned tracking from social media to your website and all these things. And for a lot of people, that sounds like really complicated and hard and impossible now. I know that it's a lot easier than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I started. Like, how hard is it for someone, or for a small business who's just starting out, to just put these tracking pieces in place so that at least they're collecting the data, even if they're not looking at it yet?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on how you have your account set up. I would really recommend having a rep. If you have, this is something for a larger company that I did, that you'd have to apply it to a smaller business in a different way. But there was a rep that we had with Meta and with Google, and they would help us to track all of those metrics, and you can hook in with APIs. And I think Google is a really easy one to start with. If you have a YouTube channel, you can get on Google Cloud and be able to download all of those metrics directly into a file. And so if you have any of those accounts, they're storing all of that data at a higher level. So all you have to do is be able to access it. So Google is a great way to go in and download it. Highly recommend it. You can just put it in an Excel file. It's better if you have a warehouse or a place to do computational modeling, but Excel is fine. You can start with something very basic like that. Same thing with Meta. You can download all of those metrics directly from the platform. So there's a lot of things that are just standard in those applications that you can start with. And as you grow, you can add additional tools to maybe track those click rates, things like that make it a little bit more robust over time.
Yeah, one thing that you can do, and this is where I start with, is that you can just take a screenshot of your analytics and show them to ChatGPT or your AI of choice and say, help me to know, what am I doing right? What am I doing? It's amazing how bad people are at analysis, because most of us didn't do it in school. I didn't take statistics in my track. Instead, I went straight to like all sorts of advanced math that I don't use. So I learned like measure the speed of a bottle rocket if it's shot when you're on a spinning merry-go-round. It doesn't come up very often, but unfortunately, I wish I'd taken statistics, as it comes up way more often. So it's very difficult for us. As you said, people will either be driven by what seems like the most popular item, or what feels the most exciting, or what they care the most about. And I'm very guilty of this. So usually my favorite, like the book I like the most of all the books I've written, is the one my audience likes the least. Easily. It's the one they hate. The book, of all the books I've written, and I have books that I like that have done well, but usually there's an opposite effect. So you never know, unless you look at the numbers, what's working, what's not working. And whenever I look at my book sales, I'm always surprised, because it's not what I think. Because you'll look at every day and not pay attention, and over time, you'll develop these incorrect impressions. At least I will. This is all about myself. So just taking a screenshot of data and being able to paste it in and say, what does this mean? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Which type of posts are working? Which type of posts are not working? That ability to interact is such a game changer, because one of the challenges is you start collecting data, and even if you have dashboards, you often don't really know what they mean, or to know what should I do based on this data. So that's really a place where I think I find AI super useful, and that's a much better use case. So setting up and collecting the data, and then saying, how should I use this data to change my actions? And there are certain things that can make a really big difference. So when I was a kid, and this is how old I am, when I was a kid, computers didn't have hard drives, and there used to be a game we would play from 5.25 floppy inch called Lemonade Stand. And you would guess, you'd buy sugar and water and lemons, and then you would price your lemonade anywhere from like a penny to $1,000. So you could charge $1,000, you would hope to make one sale that day, massive win. And if you charged a penny, you'd sell a ton, but lose all your money. So that was I wish there were more games like that. I wish I'd played more games like that in high school. I'd probably be much more successful than I am as I think about it. But to think, because it really was teaching you how much are you going to buy for tomorrow? And you have to guess how many units are going to sell. I can't remember how advanced it was, if it would tell you like it's going to rain tomorrow, it's going to be sunny and things, but you can really teach some great lessons through gamification. We don't like the forecasting is so important. So one of the things is what happens if I change the price? So I have changed the price of my products a few times. I launched a product at $500. And then when I switched to $1,000, conversion rates went up. So it actually was a boost. And then now the price is even higher. It's more and more advanced. But we have to look at is if I increase the price, will I lose as many sales like that it takes it away? So if I double the price, will I have, as long as I sell more than half as many units, I'm increasing my profit margin. So another version is I was approached by a large publishing company, one of the big five, to do a book with me. Because my book at the time was number 2 on all of Amazon. So my phone was ringing off the hook. And they said, well, you will give us you will get to keep 15% of the money. And I said, are you guys going to sell 7 times more books? And he did not like that because that's how many, because if I'm going to give up, if I'm going to take 1/7 of what I make right now, that means I need to sell 7 times more units to make the same amount of money. And I realized I was not the type of author they want to work with because they did not like when I said that. And that's how you have to make data-driven decision-making. So if you're going to raise the price, lower the price, you look at how much is this going to raise or decrease sales? And sometimes raising the price does increase sales. There's some really interesting stories about that historically. So you can't know that if you're not tracking your data. And this can become like an endemic problem in a company to where you're doing things. I've seen companies that are actually doing things that are every time they make a sale, they lose money. So think they're going good and things are going worse. Here's another story I'll let you take over is I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll spend $10,000 to start a business, make their first sale for $100. I go, I made $100. I'm like, you lost 9,900. Another column, please.
Yep.
So fire away, please.
Yeah, no, it just comes back to knowing your numbers and knowing your market. And it's one thing to know your audience too, but it's also another thing to understand the market in general. And so it's really important to do market analysis on the types of things that you're selling. Who else is selling something similar? What are they pricing it as? Who is their key customer? And what differentiates my product or my service? And so it's good to have that baseline. You really need to understand it. Otherwise, you're just throwing a dart at the wall and waiting to see what sticks. So it's really important to understand the general market, my competition, my key customer, and then all of the finances that go into developing my product. And then, of course, what you mentioned was the time. How much time am I spending on creating this? And how do I make money off of this? And if I want to hire somebody in the future to help me create this, what am I going to have to pay them? You have to build that in if that's your plan. And so all of that data is something that helps paint that picture so that you don't end up losing money down the line. And to your point, there's investments that you're putting into this later on. So maybe your specific product, he sold his product for $100. Maybe it only cost him $20 to make that one specific product, but he's $10,000 in the hole because he had to set up all this infrastructure for his company. So he has to build that in to his pricing and his long-term plan to make sure that he is recouping his investment. So there's all of these numbers that kind of come into play that help you figure out, what should I be pricing my product at? What can the market handle? And that's really important too. There's that human aspect of it that gets forgotten a lot with analytics. There's only so much that maybe your product is worth XYZ, but to the market, they're not willing to pay that. And those are things that you need to understand before you go and prepare and start developing new products, because it might not be worth it. It might not be a moneymaker. And you have to be open to the possibility when you're looking at all of those numbers put together.
Oh, one issue a friend of mine has is that in his company, he's always been doing the phone sales. And then every time he hires a phone person, lets them take over, he goes, okay, now I don't have to worry about that anymore. And then the number, he doesn't notice because there's a delay for about 2 months that our numbers are down 80%, 90%. And one of the ways I was working with him, I said, listen, here's what you got to do. You have to set up an automation system, all of your phone calls, right? AI grabs all the transcripts. So you don't have to, the salesperson doesn't have to do anything. The transcripts get fed to the AI. Every day you get a report. This many calls, this many sales, and just have a salesperson a score. How did the salesperson do on a scale of 1 to 100? What would you rate the quality of their phone call? And then you have that coming every day. And then once a week, you just get a larger number. This goes, here's the spreadsheet for the week, number of calls for the week, number of sales, number of missed opportunities, right? Where they should have made the sale, but they didn't. And then I said, that's now you're getting a real-time update. So this combines AI and automation. So you just have to figure out what you need to know and then figure out a way to, so you don't have to put in a lot of time. Like when you have to listen to all of the recordings of all the phone calls and do it manually, obviously that becomes impossible, right? Because now all the time you saved, you've lost.
Right.
Instead of being on the calls, you're just listening to them. So that's one of the ways that you can start to think about using AI and automation or using other tools that will send you a report or send you an email once a week to let you know what's working, what's not working. So that if you have the data, but you're not looking at it, which a lot of us are guilty of, then it's not really doing any good. So the first step is collect the data. The second step is figure out what you need to track from the data, what you need to know, and then set up a way to keep it on your radar, whether it's a text message or it's a email so that it's on your radar.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's a great application for it. And that's the next thing too then. Okay, so I have all these transcripts from AI. Now what do I do with it? Is it a coaching opportunity? Do I need to reevaluate who it is that I've brought into my company? Do I need to update my strategy or my training strategy? Or maybe on the flip side, maybe they're rock stars. Maybe the person that you've hired is doing a really great job. So now evaluate, what are they doing differently from myself or my other employees on the phone call that's getting us a higher conversion rate? Are there certain words that they're using over and over again that are sticking out compared to other employees? And so those are all those opportunities that you can find using a tool like that.
Oh, I think the lesson I want people to take away from today is that at least start collecting data. It's never too that you want to start thinking about what is the number that matters, because almost every metric that's exciting doesn't matter. Followers, likes, clicks, subscribers, they don't matter. Customers, sales, profit, those numbers are the numbers that matter, but they're not as exciting and they're not public. We can be very easily distracted by other people's public persona and how much it seems like they're doing. And there's a lot of perception going on with what we're seeing in other people's accounts. So the only thing that really matters is your numbers against yourself, your profit, how you can grow. And that's how you can start doing it by better analytics. So for people that want to get better analytics and are a little bit confused, or they're a little bit larger company, they want to bring in someone who just knows what they're talking about, Cara, how can people find out what you're doing, see what you're talking about, and maybe even get you to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get to that, I do want to follow on to what you just said, because I always use sport as a metaphor. I know we talked about that maybe not being the best metaphor earlier today, but if you look at these really elite athletes, people that are in the Olympics or the NFL or the NBA, all the really incredible athletes, we see them and we think, wow, look at what they're doing. I could never do that. But they all started with the fundamentals. The reason that they're good is because they have really strong fundamentals. They know how to do basics really well. They've trained their bodies to have incredible muscle memory of the fundamentals. And it's the same thing with running your business and managing your data. If you can do the basics really well, you're doing better than most people. And that's going to get you really far. And then you have that foundation where you can go out and you can grab all these fancy tools, all the AI tools, and you have the data to train them and get those tools to help you out and take you to the next level and help you grow. So if anyone is interested in working with me, I would love to talk to you or even just have a conversation. You can follow our company on LinkedIn, Earthly Analytics, or you can send us an email at information@earthlyanalytics.io. And we have a website, earthlyanalytics.io. And yeah, we would love to have a conversation and see how we can help your business to grow by getting you some really great data insights.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
I know
having
everyone's
me.
going to love this amazing episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Starting with AI can be scary. ChatGPT Profits is not only a bestseller, but also the missing instruction manual to make mastering ChatGPT a breeze. Bypass the hard stuff and get straight to success with ChatGPT Profits. As always, I would love for you to support the show by paying full price on Amazon. But you can get it absolutely free for a limited time at artificialintelligencepod.com/gift. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and tactics on how to leverage AI to escape that rat race. Head over to artificialintelligencepod.com now to see past episodes, leave a review, and check out all of our socials.